Hello everyone. Today we will be learning about the basics of demand and supply. Now first off, we need to identify or understand what demand is. Demand is the number of goods and services that buyers are willing and able to buy at different price levels. So there should be willingness and ability. Quantity demanded, on the other hand, only refers to the volume or number that buyers are willing and able to buy at a certain price. So you might think that they have the same meaning, but actually this one for demand, it's very specific that it's the number of goods and services that buyers are willing and able to buy at different price levels, whereas for the QD, it's only for a certain price level. So for example, let's say at the price of 40, the quantity that will be demanded is around 100, but if the price is dropped to 30, the quantity demanded that will be around 150. If we're just simply talking about the quantity that the people will be buying at a certain price at 40, then the quantity demanded is 100. So this is QT here. But if it's different price levels, at 40 it's 100, at 30 it is 150, then this entirety here is called the demand. Okay, so this entire thing here is demand. It's not just QS, because QS refers to the 100 at 40 pesos and 150 at 130. Okay, so I hope that that's clear. Supply, on the other hand, is the number of goods and services that sellers, okay, are willing and able to sell at different price levels. And quantity supplied only refers to the volume or number that sellers are willing and able to sell at a certain price. So once again, let's draw the line between supply and quantity supplied. So for example, again, the price is 40, and at this price, the sellers are willing to sell around 1,000 pieces of a certain item. But if the price is dropped to 30, they will only sell around 600. So if we're simply focused on the quantity being supplied at 40 pesos, which is 1,000, we are just simply talking about the QS. Or if the quantity when the price is 30, which is 600, this is QS. But if we're talking about the different price levels, and in those price levels, you have different QS as well. So this entirety here is the supply. Okay, not just focus on one number. It's really a combination of different price levels and the QS. Now, demand is being determined by the buyers, and supply is being determined by the sellers. Okay, so where do the buyers and the sellers meet? They meet in the market. Okay, a market is where selling and buying happens. Now, the relationship between the price and the QD, or the price and the QS, okay, can also be QS, can be expressed in different forms. Okay, if you recall earlier in the definition for demand, it says there it's a number of goods and services that people are willing and able to buy at different price levels. So you have here there two variables, P and QD. Okay, and in supply there were also two variables, P and QS. So the relationship between P and quantity in general can be expressed in three forms. The first one is through a tabular form, which is a schedule. So you call it a demand schedule or maybe a supply schedule. And the second one is through a graph. Okay, so we call it the demand curve or the supply curve. And the last one in which we can show the relationship between P and quantity would be mathematical, and that is what we call the demand function or the supply function. Now in this video, we will only focus on the schedule and the curve. For the function, it will be discussed in a separate video. First off, I want you to direct your eyes in this table 1. So table 1 shows you different prices, and it shows you the quantity demanded and the quantity supplied. So as you can see, the price here is 50, 75, 100. And with these prices, the quantity demanded for 50 is 6, for 75 it's 4, for 100 it's 2. Okay? And so this is what you call a demand schedule. It shows that at different price levels, there are also changes in your quantity demanded. Okay? Now, what if we just ignore simply this part? Let's ignore this one in the middle here, and let's focus our attention to the first column, this one, and this one. Okay, so it's again price and quantity supplied. So this one, the first one is for the buyers. This is a demand schedule if we are focused on the price and the QD columns. But if we focus our attention to the price and the QS columns, that's your supply schedule. So at 50 pesos, none will be supplied. At 75, 4 will be supplied. At 100, 8 will be supplied. So this kind of relationship between price and QS is called the supply schedule. Okay? Now the supply schedule can actually be converted into a graphical form, and that's what you call the demand curve or the supply curve. So if you plot the P and the QD, you can form the demand curve. If you plot the P and the QS, you have the supply curve. Okay, so just like what we have here, demand curve, supply curve. Okay, and when we combine the two together, it will look like this. So we'll take this each separate. Let's talk about the demand curve and the supply curve. First off, let us focus on the demand curve in figure 1. Please look at the points there, the different points in your demand curve, this one, this, and this. Now, all of these points, if you can recall what I have shown you earlier, these are all found in the demand schedule. Like for example, if the price is 120, the QD is 0. If the price is around, this is 70, the QD is 4. If the price is 50, the QD is 6. And you connect all the points together, you form a demand curve. Notice a demand curve is downward sloping, which indicates that there is a negative slope. What does it mean to have a negative slope? It means that if one variable is increasing, the other variable is moving in a different direction, such as the price and the quantity demanded. Why is that so? Here, it's because of the income effect and the substitution effect. What do you mean by income effect? Imagine that you are working at a fixed income of 300. When the income is fixed and prices are low, you can buy more. But if the prices are going up, you can only buy less. So that's why as price increases, QD decreases because of the fixed income. The other one is a substitution effect. When the price increases, there is a tendency for the buyers to buy less of that product because they will look for substitutes or alternatives. Now take a look at the supply curve and the points. Again, these points in the supply curve can be seen in the supply schedule shown earlier. Like for example, this one, this is 80, price of 80, and the QS is 4, and the price of 120 creates a QS of 12. Your supply curve is upward sloping, which indicates that there is a positive slope. What do we mean by positive slope? It means that when one variable is increasing, the other one is also moving in the same direction. Or if it's decreasing, then the movement of that variable is also the same. Like if P is increasing, QS is increasing. If P is decreasing, QS is decreasing as well. Okay, why is that? It's because sellers want to sell products at higher prices. Why? Because they are looking for profitability, assuming that all the other factors are constant or ceteris paribus. Okay, let me illustrate. Let's say that the price of the product is 100, and with that product or with that price, the cost of creating the product is 40. With this, the profit margin is 60. And let's say for some reason the product can now be sold at 120, but the cost is still the same, ceteris paribus. And this means that the profit margin is 80. This is a more favorable situation. Now, if you can sell the price, or if you can sell the product at a higher price, and if you earn more from it, then sellers will grab this opportunity and sell more of that product, supply more. So the QS will increase. But let's say the price is now reduced to 80, and then the cost is still 40. The profit margin is now 40. And this will discourage the sellers from supplying more, knowing that they are earning less from it. They cannot anymore sell it at a higher price. So that's why they have a positive relationship or direct relationship. Now let's focus on the law of demand. The law of demand states that when the price increases, the QD decreases, or when the price decreases, the QD increases. You have seen this relationship as I was showing you the demand schedule and then the demand curve, assuming that all the other factors are constant, or ceteris paribus. The relationship between the price and the QD is inverse or indirect, which I've already mentioned a while ago. I've mentioned about the income effect. I've mentioned also about the substitution effect. Always remember that when I say ceteris paribus, what I meant is we are assuming that the other factors have not changed. Okay, like for example, we are not assuming that we are assuming that when the price is increasing, the QD is decreasing, because we assume that the income is fixed or not changing. It's gonna be a different scenario if the price increases and at the same time there is an increase in income, because we cannot anymore guarantee that there's gonna be a drastic change in your QD, especially that it's not just QD that will change, it's gonna be the entire demand. Now I will show you later the meaning of the change in QD and the change in demand. Next is the law of supply. This is telling us that as price of the product increases, sellers will also sell more. So the quantity supplied is higher also. But if the price is lower, they're going to be selling less. Remember that sellers are in the business to earn a profit. So if they see that opportunity to sell the product at a much higher price, and then all the other factors are constant, including the cost of their inputs, then they will be happier with it. So they're going to sell more if they will be able to sell it at a higher price. Ceteris paribus still. All the other factors are assumed to be constant. Now, because you see here that the arrows are in the same direction, increase, increase, decrease, decrease, then the relationship between the price and the QS is positive or direct. Now, what if we put the two together? Putting the two curves together will make you see the point at which they intersect. So the point of intersection is what you call the market equilibrium or equilibrium point. And then the quantity, remember that this is the quantity axis and this is the price axis. The quantity at which they had agreed on, which is 4 in this case, is the equilibrium quantity. So the buyers and the sellers agreed to buy and sell 4 of this particular product, and they also have agreed on the price, which is between 80 and 60, probably around 70 or a little bit higher than 70. That is the equilibrium price. Just like when you go to the market, you always do haggling, right? You haggle with the price. You ask if you can, let's say if the price of 1 kilo of fish is around 400 pesos. So what do? You try to bargain, you try to haggle with them and then offer, what if I buy 2 kilos of fish? Can I buy it at 350 per kilo? So once the seller agrees with the quantity that you have offered and the price, the quantity, this quantity and the price that you have offered, then you have reached that point of equilibrium. So the 2 kilos there will serve as your equilibrium quantity, and the 350 pesos will serve as your equilibrium price. If ever the price that is set is higher than the equilibrium price, this is the equilibrium price, this is the equilibrium quantity. So it's in the intersection area. So once the price that will be set or is higher than the equilibrium price, let's say 180, what's gonna happen is that the quantity being demanded will be fewer, of course, because they don't like a higher price, and the quantity supplied will be higher. It's going to be 700 because sellers want a higher price. So the obviously 700 quantity is greater than 500 quantity, and this is the QS. QS is greater than QD. So once this happens, you can see that there is an excess. So there is a surplus in this area. Actually, anything above your equilibrium point, any price above the equilibrium price, you will experience a surplus. So this is a surplus area right here. And if you put a price that's below the equilibrium price, syempre, of course, the buyers would like that. They're gonna buy more of it. Okay, so this time 700 is the QD or quantity demanded. And if it's below the equilibrium price, a lower price would not encourage the sellers at all. So they're gonna be just selling a few number. Okay, so this time they're selling between 500, 600. Maybe this is 550 because this is the supply curve and this is the demand curve. And in this area, you can see that QD is 700 while QS is around 550. So QD is higher than QS. There is an excess in demand, okay? Because the price is lower. Now, anything below the equilibrium point, you will experience a shortage. So this area right here is the shortage area. Please also take note that whenever there are changes in the other factors aside from price, there will be a change in demand or supply, not just QD, not just QS. Because if we just say change in QD, imagine this is your demand curve. A change in QD would mean that the price has maybe gone up or gone down, and that the movement will just be from one point to another point, okay, or from this side to this side. So this point to this point only, or this point to this point. Okay, so either up or down movement. That is a change in QD. Okay, quantity demanded. And the change in QD is brought about by a change in price, not by a change in other factors. At the same time, if we're talking about the supply curve, a change in the quantity supplied would mean that there is a movement along the curve only from this point to this point, so from this point to this point, so up or down. And again, this kind of movement is caused by the price. Okay, to illustrate, just imagine this is 0, this is the price, this is 2, this is 4, this is 100, this is 200. Let's say this is the demand curve. And if the price is 4, the quantity being demanded is 100. But if the price is 2, the quantity being demanded is 200. So there's a movement from point A to point B, like that. Okay? And if it is supply, still, say it's 0, 2, and 4 still, 100, 200. If the price is 2, then the QS is 100. If the price is 4, then the QS is 200. So still the movement is from this point to this point. So that's what you call an upward or downward movement along the curve. But if the other factors will change, you call them non-price factors, the movement will not be anymore up or down. The movement will either be right or left. Now, a rightward shift in your demand curve would mean that there is an increase in your demand. Let me just erase. Now, this rightward shift in your demand, so from this point, D sub 1 to D sub 2, that's a rightward shift. There is an increase in demand, not increase in quantity demanded. Remember that QD only changes when there is an increase in the price or decrease in the price. But this increase in demand was brought about by the change in any of these factors. And at the same time, when there is a shift in your demand curve, this one, D1 to D2, shift to the left, you see here a decrease in demand. And the decrease in demand is again brought about by these non-price factors. All of this. Now the question is, how does this non-price factors influence your demand or change your demand, increase or decrease your demand? Let's take a look at the price of substitutes. When you say substitutes, these are products that can be used as alternatives to each other. Like for example, let's say juice and soda. So whenever there is a change in the price of juice, let's say there is an increase in the price of juice, people would tend to look for alternative. So they might buy more soda. So the demand for soda will increase. It will shift to the right. Okay? Or probably we'll take a look at the price of complements. When you say complements, these are products that always go together, like gasoline and cars. And I think this is very relevant nowadays, especially that the price of gasoline has increased significantly. And although we might not know this, or we may not uh, uh, see the figures right now, but definitely the increase in the price of gasoline has affected the demand for cars. And what do you think happened to the demand for cars? For sure, there must have been a decrease in the demand for cars, assuming that the other factors are constant. Because if the other factors are also changing, like for example, as the price of gas increases, but then there's also a significant increase in the income of the buyers, then they might not mind at all the increase in the price of gas because anyway their income is increasing at the same time. So it might not affect their demand for cars. So it's very important that we have assumptions because in reality, we cannot really absolutely say that the increase in this particular factor would most likely have this kind of effect, especially that there are many other factors that are also at play. Okay, let's take a look at price expectations. Although it says here price, but it's a non-price factor because it's just an expectation that there's going to be a change in the price. Again, let's go back to gasoline. As someone who also drives, I look at changes in the prices of gasoline in the future. So for example, if I learn that there is going to be a rollback next week, I will tend to hold my purchase for gasoline this week, or I might buy a lesser number of or a lesser volume of gasoline for this week because I will try to buy more when the price is already reduced or by next week. Okay, so my demand for gasoline this week will be affected. It will most likely reduce in expectation of a price decrease in the future, in the near future. Okay, and at the same time, if I expect that the price of gasoline will increase in the future, what's gonna happen? I will tend to buy more this week. So it actually happened to me when we learned that there's gonna be a price increase in gasoline in the next few weeks, I decided to buy a lot of gasoline using a certain application in my phone so that I will be able to hold or lock that price, okay, uh, while waiting for it to go back to its original. So I'll be able to buy myself or keep myself safe from any price increase, okay, for the meantime. Next is income. Usually, if there is an increase in income, we expect an increase in demand because you can buy more. However, it really depends on the kind of product that we're talking about. If we're talking about normal goods, which can be a normal luxury or a normal necessity, okay, luxury like cars, perfumes, jewelry, necessity, foods, uh, beverages, healthcare. When the income is high, we tend to have a higher demand for luxury goods and normal necessity goods. So our demand will increase, shift to the right. However, if we're talking about inferior goods, goods that we buy normally when our income is low, like dried fish, or probably a jeepney ride instead of a taxi ride or instead of driving your own car. So when your income is high, that's when you tend to buy less of inferior goods because you can now afford to buy the more expensive ones. But when your income is low, that's when you will try to buy more of the inferior goods because that's what you can afford. So an increase in income, therefore, will only result to an increase in demand if you're talking about normal goods. But usually, if we are talking about inferior goods, when there is an increase in income, your demand for inferior goods will decrease. Next is preference. For preferences, when you like that product, you tend to buy it. You tend to buy more of it. So there's gonna be a shift in your demand to the right. If you don't like it, then the demand will shift to the left. Number of buyers. If there are more buyers, there will be more demand. If few buyers, fewer demand. Advertisement. Okay, maybe the number of hours that you spend on air, if the airtime allowance that you have allotted for the product will increase the demand. If there is no advertisement, probably will the demand will decrease, or maybe there is no change in the demand at all. So that's just an example. Season. If the product is on season, demand will increase. If the product is off season, demand will decrease. There are also non-price factors affecting supply. And also, just like demand, if there is an increase in the supply curve will shift to the right. And if there is a decrease in supply, this is the original supply, it will shift to the left. And how can technology shift your supply or increase or decrease your supply? Better technology can increase supply. It can increase your productivity. A defective technology, a broken technology might decrease your supply. Price expectations. Okay, so some sellers, when they know that the product that they're selling might not be any more saleable in the future, or they might have to sell it at a lower price, they will tend to supply or release these inventories at the present because they don't want to release these products when the price of the products are already down. But when they expect that the price will go up in the near future, okay, some sellers tend to do hoarding. They will not sell the products as of the moment. They will sell it, or they will sell less of it for the moment, and they will sell more of it when they think that the time is right when they think that the price for the product is already high and they can earn more from it. But of course, that is not ethical. Number of sellers. If there are more sellers, supply will increase. If there are fewer sellers, supply will decrease. Input cost, the cost of your product, cost of production. So, of course, if you're going to be spending more for the product, assuming that the price is still the same, let's say the price is 100 and originally the cost is 40. So your profit margin is 60. And if the input cost, including labor, increases from 40 to 60, that means your profit margin is now 40. And that is not something that is creating happiness for you. That is not satisfactory for a seller. So an increase in the cost, in the input cost, will reduce supply. Okay, it will shift to the left. This is what's going to happen if the input cost is higher. But if the input cost is lower, which will result to a higher profit, they will sell more of it. Supply will shift to the right. Season. For season, if it's on season, they will supply more of it, like umbrellas, like swimsuits during summer. But if it's off season, of course, there is no logic behind in selling more of something that is not on season. Okay, so they will sell less of it if it's off season. And that's it. That's it for our basics of demand and supply. Please look for the video that talks about the demand function and the supply function. Thank you.